Okay, what I have here is an Elgin pocket watch. It's quite a unique little pocket watch. It's from the early 1900s. It's got a you get to access the crystal on the watch. You actually open the front here. See if I can do this without ruining anything here. And this comes open just like so here, which is pretty unique. It's not lever set, so not sure why they had this feature in here, but it was I think it's like a Dublin case, but it's beautiful. I haven't cleaned it yet or adjusted it or anything. So that's the front, and you can see the face on it is really good condition. Beautiful watch. So if we look at the back here, and I crack that open, move the bow out of the way, keep my thumbnail along here so I can open these cases without having to use a knife, and I just have to flip it. See if I can get this from this side here. There we go. And you've got, there's the case there. There's some punch marks on the inside. I'm not sure why these are made, but they're right there on the inside. And I'll get a drawing tool out and show you where I'm talking about here. The punch marks are, you can see the punch marks. There's one right there, there's one right there, and there's one right there. And these punch marks, not sure why they were made, whether they were trying to straighten the case out at one time or what, but there's a few ripples in the case. There's also some wear on the back of the case, just a bit of wear on it. And that wear is also in this area right here on the case. So in general, though, the case is in pretty good condition. If you look at it from far, you wouldn't see any of that. And then this is the lid that protects the movement. And also the lid here has got some markings in this area here, as you can see. And again, not sure what the individual did, but whether that's part of the case design or not. But there's the inside of the movement, and it's not a fancy movement at all, but it's in good condition. And it's 15 joules. I don't believe it's adjusted, but it's a 15 joule watch. There's no joule for the center wheel, but in general it's in very good condition. I wound it up and it doesn't work, so it's going to need servicing. It's probably gummed up from not being serviced for many years. I saw a marking on the inside said that it was serviced in 1933. Now what I typically do to check and see if the movement is actually okay, even though it needs cleaning, is I put a little bit of power on the wheel here, center wheel, and see if I get any action. I probably won't get any action, but because I think this thing is pretty gummed up. And I get a little bit of action there. There we go. No, I think I've got to clean this thing because it ain't gonna tick for me unless it gets cleaned. If you put too much pressure on this wheel too, it just doesn't want to go. So I think it looks like the balance here is pretty gummed up. I can tell it's not moving nice and freely. So, which means that the end caps need to be taken off, and the jewels need to be cleaned. And so what I'll do is I'll let the power down on the watch right now. And there's a couple of ways of letting the power down on the watch. One way is that you took a screwdriver and you put it in here, and then you release the ratchet here. The ratchet's actually here, so this is kind of the ratcheting device. So this way here, you just turn this just a bit, and if I can get a screwdriver in here, you don't want to. Usually you do this with a toothpick so you don't scratch anything, but see, then I let it roll back in my fingers like that, and there we go. And it's starting to. What you don't want to do is let it go, because if it lets go, even though it has a safety pinion, it could break something. So you just release it nice and easy with allowing it to slide through your thumb and your finger, and that relieves the power from the mainspring onto the various gears. wheels, as they call them. Right, I think I'm almost at the end here. Yeah, I got nothing left. So there we go. So that's where I was ratcheting it there. I'd press that back a bit. And so now it's completely undone. And then the next step I have to do is I got to take the case out. So I got to get the right size screwdriver to do this. You don't want to use a screwdriver blade that is too fat or too thin. So get the right size screwdriver and just remove this. Now you can sometimes unscrew these, like turn them once or twice, and then it'll fall right out of the case. In this case I've turned it like that, and I believe if I open up the movement here, then the watch should fall right out. The movement. With any luck. If it doesn't, I'll just prime it a bit. Let me see here. Yeah, it looks like it's still caught a bit. There we go. And the other thing is, always pull out the stem before you do that. Now, is that out or in? Don't see it if it's out or in. Just hang on while I do screw this up here. Gotta pull the stem out here. No, stem is not. You gotta make sure the stem is out, or you can break it off when you pull the movement out. There we go. The way I pull a stem out usually is I hold it with my thumb and my finger here, then my other thumb and finger here, over the top, and I do that like this, as opposed to holding it here and pulling it like this. It tends to give it a more solid feel. So now it's out, as you can see. So that's all good. And now when I roll this over, and I gotta make sure I don't screw this up. The worst thing you can do is let it all fall onto the ground. Now when I roll it over, the movement should come right out of the case. So there's the case. So that's a nice little case, a dubber case, I guess, or whatever the hell it's called. And yeah, there it is there. A lot of pieces to this case. And there's the movement right there. The good news is the balance is moving on this thing, which is nice. The bad news is it's all gummed up. And it's got a nice little cover here as well that you would take off for servicing. I'm going to remove that cover as well. But first I've got to get some stuff. My hands are lined up there. Anyway, that's the face of it, which is a beautiful condition. And then the movement in the back, which I will completely clean. So it should be in full operating condition. I'm also going to have to inspect it for any broken jewels. Now, what I find the biggest pain in the butt in repairing watches is actually placing the hands back on the movement. Taking them off is pretty easy. You fashion yourself a piece of paper like that with a little V-slit in it, and then you tuck it in underneath the hands, nice and easy, like so. See if I can do this here. Sometimes it comes in easy, and sometimes it doesn't. If you do that, like that, I'm not going to put it any further than that. I've got this in one of these plastic movement holders that are pretty good for pocket watches. This might not be as stable as I want it for this job, but these should come off pretty easily. So usually you don't have to force too hard for the hands to come off. So I just want to make sure that the pocket watch doesn't go flying here. And just carefully maneuver them off. There we go. So that's the two hands, like that. And I just took a little bit of a jump. And then this one here, this hand needs to come off too. And sometimes I find this hand just comes off with very easily. And you can usually get this hand off from one side almost. So, but you don't want to ruin the hand at all. So, but I find that if I just wedge it in on this side here, it comes off like that. So there you go. So then I can just spill these hands onto the ground here a little bit. And then what I do is I will pick these hands up with my handy pair of tweezers and place them out of the way. And sometimes I just put parts like that in the case that it came from. That way it's easy to find. Other times I'll put them in a tray. Depends how anal I am. And it depends actually whether I'm going to do the whole job at once or I'm going to do it over a long period of time. So this one here I made, see, there we go. Slide them in there for now. And then I need to flip the watch like this and have a look at it there. And I can usually remove this part here by putting a screwdriver in there and just angling it a bit. So again, I got to make sure I get the right size screwdriver. I need to move my screwdrivers a bit because they're kind of out of the way. So there we go. So you just put the screwdriver right in the ridge here and then take this off here, and all this is doing is protecting the movement from anything coming from the side, like dust or anything like that. And so it's just a small ring, and it goes on. And you don't have to remember how that goes in because it's kind of pretty intuitive the way that goes in. And then the next thing I would do on this here, or I'll do on this thing here, is I will take off. I could do two things here. What I could do is I can test the watch if I wanted to, right? By taking the balance cock off and then winding the barrel and see if there's any movement in it. Or I can just, I'm going to clean it anyway, so I might as well just take all this apart. So I'll do that. So I'm going to put it back in this little holder here, so it's under a little bit of control. Make sure I got it in the right place, and I'll get the right. So I'll just capture this for a second. This is what the movement looks like right now. So, and then what I'll do is unscrew the wheel for the top of the mainspring. If you recall, I took the tension off the mainspring. I'll call it tension. Now, please don't criticize me in some of the terms I use. I try to remember all the terms properly, but I've only been doing this work for a few years, so I'm kind of almost a rookie at this compared to guys like Mark, who everyone knows. I would be a rookie. And actually, as a rookie, the first thing I should have done was remove the face of the watch. So before I even took that screw out, so that was probably a bad move. That was a rookie move. I've done a whole bunch of these pocket watches before, so to remove the face, what you do is you stick the screwdriver in here, and there's usually 3 screws, and those 3 screws hold these 3 little legs in place that are the face of the watch. 1, 2, and then the third one. And then the face should just come right off with any luck. And you just loosen those up. And here the face is, not sure whether this is just going to come off this way or whether I'm going to have to wedge something in. Also, if you look right here, there's a hole. And that hole, you can stick the screwdriver in or something. I'm not sure if the screwdriver is big enough, but a point of my tweezer maybe, and you can push up on the face from that hole like that. See that? And that loosens up the watch face. That's what these are for. Here we go. As opposed to the retarded method I was using a few seconds ago by shaking it like a can of pop. So there we go there. Not sure if I got enough of it there. There we go. So it came out, and with it came the gear that covers the cannon pinion. So there we go. If you see that, there's this cover here goes on top. This little piece of copper ring goes on top of this, and this ensures when the face of the watch is installed on the top here, that there isn't friction between the face and this, so it gives it some protection. So that's how that works. And so when that's put together, you got to make sure that it goes in the right direction. So that's the face, and I can wipe that off after. And again, it's in just mint condition. It's got a few fingerprints in it from some other watch guy, but other than that, the thing is in mint condition. And then the cannon pinions here too, which I would normally pull out, and I think I'll just pull that out too, because I can get that out of the way, then I don't have to worry about it later. So I just grab that with my tweezers and pull that out like that, and that's in pretty good shape. And I typically put the cannon pinion in with the other things too. And that way I got it all in the same place. I might put all this in a plastic container. I'm not sure if I'll get around to it, cleaning the whole thing today or not. And then there's a little piece of dust there. And the smallest piece of dust can stop a watch. So I'm just looking at the movement in general, and it's not too bad. It's in good condition. So back to what I was doing before. Now that I got the cannon pinion out, there, I can lay this down pretty well on the ground. There's the actual center wheel sticks through, right? So I want to get this thing all taken apart so the center wheel's not in the way. So I'll put it back in here. I'll be a good boy. So there we go. That's where I'm at now. And then I was going to see if I could loosen this, because this seemed like it was screwed in really tight. Sometimes these go in the reverse direction, and sometimes they don't. So sometimes it's very hard to tell. So, and this one here, I'm not sure. Seems like it's in really friggin' tight. So I may have to deal with that later. That seems like it's in incredibly tight. Just see if I can loosen it. So I almost cracked my knuckle loosening this thing, because it was incredibly tight, and it goes counterclockwise, which is a good thing to remember. That's why you gotta group your screws sometimes. Although this is obviously, the size of this is pretty obvious. So and I'll just, feather that out a bit like that, and put it over in the side here. And then I can take this out here as well, and then move that over on the side as well with the screw. And you don't want to lose. Often I don't bother taking this out here when I clean it, because it's just basically doesn't really need oiling. It's a ratchet, so it's sometimes a waste of time doing that. So it's, anyway. Now these screws here should come out, really, the case screws. So I'm going to just unscrew the case screws so they're out of the way. I think they're going to unscrew for me here. Just turn them until they feel that they're giving. There we go. Felt a click. Then you take them out, put them in the case. Put them with the case. Let me just put the case here so you can see it. And then I'll take the next one out. Yeah, unscrewing that friggin' ratchet screw was awful. Well, it probably had been in there since 1920. So this watch was only serviced, looked like it had only been serviced 3 times. And there was a marking on the inside that actually said 1933. So some guy in 1933, just before World War II, serviced this watch, which is pretty friggin' amazing when you think about it. So I'm going to take these parts out here. So I'm just taking the main plate off here, and hopefully there's no issues. They seem to be pretty good condition. These screws are not in that tight, actually, because there's no snugness to them at all. So once I have it like this, then I can usually just work off the main plate a little bit, like so. And look at that, the center wheel came with it. So that's how gummed up this thing is. It's so gummed up that when I pulled off the plate here, the center wheel came with it. So that's pretty funny. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So that's the 3 screws. So I want to make sure when I take off this center wheel I don't screw anything up like the pinion. I'm going to put that over on the side here a bit. And there we go, I got all that apart nicely. And it looks pretty good. That's the plate, the main plate there, and with this 3 screws. So what I try to do is keep the screws with the plate. And when I wash that main plate, I'm going to wash it in lighter fluid. Be able to pull out the barrel here. So there's the mainspring barrel. So I probably will crack that open and have a look at inside and make sure it's okay. So that's the barrel there. And this is some of the keyless work here that I'll take out. And there it is there. I'll put that in here. Right there. And so I gotta unscrew that after, I guess, too. So, and then I'm gonna take out the balance here. Gotta move in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. Right. So I'm going to take out the balance here. So just unscrew that like that. That seems to be in nice and tight. There we go. Okay. I think that's out. And I've got this cool little device I use for holding the balance. You grab it here. And this is a balance tack. I keep a little piece of wood on top of it because if you don't, it'll screw your hands up big time. And then when you take the balance out like this, like so, like that, and then you put it right on the balance tack like that, so that the hairspring and the balance are all kind of contained. And then I'll move this out of the way. So the good thing to do is to have space for all this stuff, but I'm trying to videotape it. So, and then later on I'm going to have to unscrew the mainspring, or the hairspring from the balance. So first what I'll do is I'm going to unscrew this plate here. That was on pretty tight, pretty darn tight. I'm going to move the camera just a bit here. So just do this. And again, you got to keep the screws together. So this is a screw for the balance, and what I typically do is when I put it on the tack, I actually put the screw on the balance tack with the balance. So I got it all together in one place because I don't want to be hunting for screws. That's not a good thing. I've done that before. So I'll put that one down here, and then I got to remove this one. The screw here on the plate. See if this one, how tight this one's on. That was on tight too. And with these balance, or with this movement holder, you got to kind of brace it on this side while you put pressure on the other side. I learned that the hard way. The thing will fling off on you. And then now I've got to shim up this. Just get my screwdriver under here, and you just put it under and twist it a bit, like that. And that will remove the this plate here, and there's no wheel stuck to it, which is a good thing. And I'll examine the jewels in this plate later. So that's the plate there, and it holds the other wheels. So I've got this wheel here, which is the let me see, first, second, third. I think it's the third. Or first, second, third, fourth. So this is the fourth wheel. And I can check the pinions on these two to make sure they're nicely polished as well. And use my J-Cot tool to polish the pinions. So I'm going to put these back in the right order. And there's the other one there. And that goes gear up. And the last one went gear down. And then I can take out right here. There we go. It looks like it's in pretty good condition as well. And so that's pretty good. This is the escapement. And then looks like the pivots are good on this one too. So I'll put that over there. I'm kind of singing or something. Da, 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 da. And then I need to remove the pallet fork, so take the screw out here, like that, and make sure one thing though, I got these two screws here that are from that other plate, and I want to put them back where they're supposed to be, although I'd probably be able to match them up pretty easily. But that's the plate that holds the pallet fork in place, so just fine if you just take a screwdriver and just wedge it in and then just shake it back and forth a bit, you can often get the thing loosened up on you. But you got to do it kind of easily. There we go. And it actually took the fork with it, so, and the pinions are good and they look like they're intact. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but it doesn't seem to want to focus. And come on, focus. There we go. So there's the pallet fork, and it's jammed into the jewel hole, but that'll all be cleaned up as well. So, and if you're going to oil the jewel holes for the pallet fork, you got to be very careful. I've read places where they said you don't really need to do that, so I just took that out and it seems pretty gummed up too. So that is the pallet fork, and that's the plate that holds it in place, like that. And I typically don't bother with removing this keyless work here. It's a big pain in the butt. What I do is just oil it up after. So I could remove it if I was really anxious. I could remove this if I was really anxious, which I probably should actually. This I do remove, but the other keyless work is a pain in the butt to put back together, and it's actually not really necessary because it's used for winding the watch or changing the time. So as long as it's well lubricated, then you don't really have to remove it. This is the world's smallest screws here, so to make sure that I don't lose these screws. This screw here was from something. Oh yeah, it was from the pallet fork. Is from over here, so that is what I find the hardest thing, is making sure I friggin' map the screws properly. So, because I've lost screws in the carpet before, and it's not easy. You get on your hands and knees and your wife comes in and goes, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm looking for gold, dear." So I just have to make sure that I don't lose stuff. My hands are very steady, so far anyway. And we'll see when I get really old what happens. But right now they're good. So glad. There we go. I think I have to put a little tiny bit of oil under there for this plate, but not a lot. And just recommended oiling for there. So you don't want too much to cause too much friction there. So there's the face. So that's fairly cleaned out now. If I were real keener, I'd remove this, but I'm not. So the heck with it. I just find it a pain in the butt to put all this back together again. So then I'm going to examine each one of these jewels, to make sure there's no cracks in each of the jewels. And I do have. No, it looks like I got a problem right there. So it looks like this jewel right here. See if I can get this thing to friggin' focus. There we go. Yeah, it looks like this jewel right here could have an issue. So I'm going to have to look at that and see if I need to do anything to fix it. But you can see there's a little bit of cracking there. That could completely jam a watch up. That jewel might have to be replaced. It looks like it's pressed in, which is good news, because I think I can press the jewel in as opposed to rubbed in. I'm not sure, but I'll have a look at that. So I'll make sure I fix that and re-jewel. Anyway, that's it for now. Next step is cleaning.